What is going on, ladies, gentlemen? Welcome to this week's edition of the Weekend Roundup. It was always going to be a busy weekend with domestic seasons getting closer to their conclusion, FA Cups, those sorts of things. But by the time we got to the end of this, it had taken on a level of drama I did not expect, certainly. And we're going to get to all that, but we are going to start with the FA Cup, Liverpool, Chelsea, second time in a domestic cup final this season. Second time Liverpool come out on penalties. And before we get into the game itself, it is worth acknowledging how important these two shootouts have become in shaping these two teams' seasons. Really just take a second to think about it. If Chelsea wins both of these, they've got 3 trophies, both domestic cups and the Club World Cup. Now we're talking about Chelsea can't wait for this season to be over because and Chelsea also very well there's a world in which Chelsea is also in the Champions League final had they held out against Real Madrid. Instead, they got knocked out in really disappointing fashion. They lost 2 domestic cups, so you've got a Club World Cup that only carries so much significance, especially in Europe for a European team. And you've got the backdrop of the team being sold and not being able to re-sign your players and all of that kind of stuff. So Thomas Tuchel is just, I'm sure, ready for a vacation at this point. But had they gotten even one of these trophies, it would have really salvaged part of this season. It was never going to be what they wanted it to because they were never a factor in the Premier League race. But it could have had a very different ending had they won just one of these. And on the flip side, had Liverpool both lost both of these shootouts, and we'll get to how the Premier League is setting up for the final week of the season here, but there's a real chance they would have gone into the Champions League final with 0 trophies for a team that's still fighting on 4 fronts. Just because of 2 shootouts. But Liverpool ultimately win both of them, get their second trophy, and the storyline of this game really started from before the whistle when Thomas Tuchel decided to go with Romelu Lukaku and Christian Pulisic. Pulisic was one of the more dangerous players in Chelsea's attack and had a fairly good performance. Lukaku struggled mightily again and certainly did not repay the faith Thomas Tuchel had shown in him. He had a good string of performances, and so Tuchel was absolutely justified in giving him the start and thinking maybe we can get this thing going. He had 15 touches and a shot in 85 minutes. And what Lukaku is so good at is the hold-up play, the linking of the passes, all of the kind of center forward stuff that doesn't actually result in goals and assists. That's what made him so dynamic at Inter. People are able to play off him because he's so big and he's so technically gifted and he's so comfortable with his back to goal and all of that stuff. That's what you have to do to get the most out of him. Chelsea's attack was very much built through Pulisic and Mason Mount going wide, cutting inside, throwing in crosses. It was a very fitting microcosm of how Lukaku's season has gone. He just wasn't a factor in any real way in this game. He had a chance here or there, but was not the focal point you need your striker you just spent all that money on to be. And this really could have not turned his season around, but propelled something positive heading into next season and this summer, depending on how it all plays out. Just from the standpoint of you backed up some good performances with a really good performance in the FA Cup final. He didn't do that, and so now we're kind of back to square one of what in the world do you do with him if you're Chelsea, and how does this ultimately play out? Liverpool had the better of the play for the most part, dominated possession in the first half. Chelsea really couldn't bother them. They didn't create a ton of chances. It wasn't a lethal Liverpool attack. But Chelsea were certainly second best and kind of just trying to hang on and hope something changes. It certainly changed coming out of the locker room for the second half. Chelsea really took control for a brief stretch there and absolutely could have gotten a goal and gone ahead. They wouldn't have deserved it, but they had their chances. Marcos Alonso had a free kick. There was a nice string of events there where Chelsea were really putting pressure on Liverpool. They can't get the goal, though. Liverpool kind of wrestled control back, hit the woodwork twice in the final 10 or so minutes of the game, or of regular time, I should say. Just, again, Andy Robertson had a couple opportunities. He just couldn't sort of get his feet sorted and put the ball on target. Luis Diaz was really dangerous. The end product wasn't there, though. And so, once again, it's scoreless. Go to extra time where almost nothing happened. And that sets up the scene for the penalty shootout, which ultimately Liverpool prevail in. Couple other things to point out about this game. Obviously, Mo Salah left late in the first half. Seemed to be precautionary. He is certainly under the impression he's playing in the Champions League final, so that is very good to hear. It just kind of came across as he wasn't... You could tell when he left in the Champions League final how devastated he was, and understandably so. I didn't get the same vibes from him this time. He certainly has already come out saying he intends to play, so hopefully that was just a precautionary... We've got Diogo Jota, who's more than capable of getting us through this game. We don't need to risk anything. We need you ready for, hopefully, the Premier League finale and then obviously the Champions League. So good news on that front. Also wanted to give some props to Trent Alexander-Arnold. I know Luis Diaz was awarded player of the game. To me, it was Alexander-Arnold. I didn't have to think too hard about it. The pass he had in the opening 10 minutes was absolutely ridiculous. That's probably the best pass I've ever seen. With the outside of his foot, I mean, stop it. But every bit as important as that, if not more important, was the defensive work he did in this game. Particularly against a team like Chelsea, who love to have their left wing back, especially when it's Marcos Alonso, dart in and sort of turn into a center forward and make that run right across the space Alexander-Arnold was covering. Was not an issue. Time after time you saw, and Taylor Twellman kept harping on this in the broadcast, he was cutting out everything. Every time somebody tried to cut across him, he was there to get a piece of the ball, to knock it away, to remove the danger. He was really good defensively. There are sacrifices you have to make because of the way he plays and his skill set. From a positional standpoint, you're going to have some awkward shapes because he gets so high up the field and is trying to sort of turn into a midfielder when they have the ball, those kind of things. The part you can't compromise on is the defensive fundamentals. And recently that has been an issue for both Liverpool outside backs. Not in this one. He was very, very good at the stuff he has to do defensively that are the non-negotiables. So props to Trent Alexander-Arnold. That was one of the most complete performances, in my opinion, he's ever had in a Liverpool shirt. Not his best necessarily, but from a checking every single box, he was sensational. So Liverpool get their trophy, and thanks to a valiant effort from West Ham, are now a bigger factor in the Premier League race again. Manchester City can only get a draw against the Hammers. Jared Bowen scores twice in the first half, nearly had a hat trick. If he could have gotten that goal and the one that hit the woodwork against Eintracht Frankfurt in the first leg of that Europa League semifinal, he has had a phenomenal season. And I'm telling you right now, he is going to be on my Premier League all-important team. He has been terrific. And the way some of the other wing or possible wing players are performing from an English national team standpoint, he is at least playing himself into the conversation, if not onto a place on that plane when we talk about the World Cup. He has carried the load for West Ham this season, and he did it again in this game. He showed you everything he's been doing this season. But Manchester City are able to show the mental toughness that has always been there and fight back to get it to 2-2. this was a fitting sort of after Pep went on his rant about some of the mentality stuff and what his Barcelona team did to some of the guys who were criticizing the mental makeup of this City team. They showed you don't win as much as they have without having mental toughness and without being calm under pressure. They have their issues, but being able to turn a game around like this is not one of them. Now, to be fair to West Ham, Mikel Antonio could have made this 3-1, and that might have been it. He doesn't take the opportunity, so it's 2-2, which sets the scene for the part of this I will never understand, which is Riyad Mahrez stepping up to take the penalty City rightfully deserved. Riyad Mahrez has never been the best penalty taker on his team. Jamie Vardy is way better at Leicester, and you've got Jesus, De Bruyne, you go down the list, Bernardo Silva at Manchester City of guys I would rather have taking him than him. He's the one that steps up. I don't know if he decided it. Nobody else wanted it, which at that point, that's another conversation. You'd have to think he won an argument, though. And he misses it and never looked confident, just like the last high-profile penalty he took. And he is now 12 of 18 on penalty kicks in the Premier League in his career across his time at Leicester and Manchester City. The eye test tells you he shouldn't have been taking that. The numbers tell you he shouldn't have been taking that. Credit to him for wanting to take it. Certainly prefer that to the other side of the coin. You could just tell. And he's one of the very few players I feel that way about. But sometimes you can just tell it's not going to end well. And that was one of those situations. He gets it saved. West Ham have some halfway decent chances to maybe steal this. Doesn't come to fruition and it ends 2-2. And ultimately, Manchester City got exactly what they needed out of it. Yeah, so win would have almost surely sealed the Premier League. But what this does is it keeps it in their control. All they need to do is win. They just need to worry about themselves, and it's theirs. It opens up the door for Liverpool, sure. But it only opens up the door if Manchester City don't do their job. And from going 2-0 down to potentially bringing goal difference back into this conversation, to still being completely in control of your own destiny, is a massive win for Manchester City. If you're Pep, you are more than content with that scoreline. That was not the only dramatic thing to happen in the Premier League, though. You had a whole series of things. Spurs beat Burnley on what Burnley deemed to be a controversial handball. To me, it was pretty cut and dry. Harry Kane didn't put the ball in the side of the net. Harry Kane didn't put the ball in the corner. He put the ball literally into the side of the net. You talk about confidence and penalties. Harry Kane, rock solid from the spot. He gets Spurs a much needed win, keep the pressure on Arsenal. Then at the end of the table, of course, Burnley lose that game. Leeds get a stoppage time equalizer in a game they very easily could have lost. And so they're out of the relegation zone. They drop Burnley back in. Everton take the lead not once but twice. In between those two, have a man sent off. Then concede 2 more. And then have Solomon Rondon get himself sent off within 5 minutes of being substituted into the game. So they lose 3-2 and are down to 9 men. It seems this is just going to be a thing in the relegation battle every week, is which team's going to have somebody get sent off. It was Leeds 2 weeks in a row, and this time it was Everton. Particularly Rondon. There was just no reason. So now we have another twist, and there's going to be at least one more. There are still games to play here, so Leeds kind of have to wait and see what it's going to look like heading into the final day of the season because they have only one game left. But here's the deal. Burnley have to put points on the board to avoid relegation. Leeds put a point on the board. Now the pressure is on Burnley. And these teams are all starting to struggle again. So you feel much, much better if you're Jesse Marsch now than you did before you got that equalizer. Something else is going to happen. I don't know what it is. We're going to have to wait to find out. Championship playoffs. Also want to touch on these real quick. Our first legs got underway, and the second legs are happening at the beginning of this week. Huddersfield Luton, a very balanced 1-1 draw. It was absolutely a fair result. It looked for a second like Huddersfield were going to blow them away, but Luton fight back, get into the game, get their equalizer, and then it was very evenly matched from there. They were certainly not outplayed significantly on the overall 90 minutes. So Huddersfield, you've got to feel really good going back to your home leg. You not only avoided a lopsided loss, but you avoided defeat altogether. So all you need to do is just win. And then you've got Nottingham Forest, Sheffield United. This game could have been 3-0 to Forest. They were really, really good from the get-go. Sheffield United just didn't show up in the first half, but they did come to life after halftime. It was one of those where it kind of could have, sort of like the FA Cup final, it could have gone either way. Sheffield United were unlucky not to score a goal at the beginning of the second half. And at the same time, this could have been 3-0 Forest. It ultimately ends 2-1, which is also a pretty fair result. Sheffield United saving until the very end to get their equalizer, though, but they do get it, so they've got some life heading back to the second leg. Ultimately, the point here is both your favorites, Huddersfield, Nottingham Forest, who get that home second leg, are in excellent, excellent position. Better than historically teams that still are able to advance are. And I go into more detail on that in my 5 things from the week on Substack. But this is excellent, excellent position for both of those teams. So it certainly looks like we're going to get a Huddersfield-Nottingham Forest playoff final. Still 90 minutes to play, though, and both of these are very much up for grabs. Neither of them are decided by any stretch of the imagination. Finally, Serie A. Just like the Premier League, we kind of get the results we need to set the stage for a really exciting end to the season. Both Milan clubs win again, so this is going to go down to the final game. Theo Hernandez scored what is probably going to be the best solo goal of the season. If you haven't seen it already, go watch it. He just picked up the ball and just kept dribbling and then scored. He looked like he was flying and was untouchable. It was a terrific goal, and that was really the one that sealed AC Milan's win over Atalanta and put them in the driver's seat heading into this last game where they are in control. All they need to do is hold up their end of the bargain, and they're going to win Serie A. So congratulations to them for getting to this point. We'll see if they can get it done. Got plenty to set the stage for next weekend coming this week. Live show Wednesday, all of that good stuff. So be on the lookout for that. But that is all we have for you this morning on the Weekend Roundup. And we will see you next time.